Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today is Saturday, May 30th, 2020, and we are getting ready to get into a live stream titled The Racism Root, a complex discussion of race and police brutality in America. So sit tight. This is going to be a long one and a deep one. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. We'll get started here shortly. And while we're waiting, I'll give you guys a little bit of a life update from me. This will probably be the most lighthearted part of the whole entire live stream. So I figure we'll start with something lighthearted and then end up where we end up. But you guys, believe it or not, I have a puppy now. I have a puppy. Yes, you heard that right. PTE has a puppy now. So I now have 2 cats and a dog. Isn't that something? I know. It's a long story. I didn't see it coming either. So it's as much of a surprise to me as it may be to you. But yeah, so I'm now a mother of 3. I have 2 cats and a dog, little puppy. So we are not going to talk about that much. I'll actually get into that on a separate stream and I'll give you guys the whole rundown and the whole story. But part of the reason that I tell you guys that is because she's been very vocal today. And I'm sure she's going to make her presence known sooner or later. So I'm like, let me just go ahead and roll you out. I was going to do a big rollout of her. But I figured, let me just break the ice. I'm sure she'll bark, whatever. If I have to take off really quick, someone's probably pooping or peeing somewhere in the house that I'm not happy with. So yeah. What did I get myself into? Anyway, welcome you guys. Welcome. We have a very intense show today. We have a lot to talk about. She's a Shih Tzu. So she's half Shih Tzu, half Poodle, and 100% insane. So yeah, it's been an experience. So we'll talk about that for sure. All right, let me get my screens readjusted. Actually, I'll leave the screen here for a second while I just kind of warm up and set up the opening of this. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to everybody. This is a topic that's been a long time coming. I've done touch and goes here and there on these subjects, just brief touch and go, just touch the wheels down, take back off, right? And there are reasons for that. And I'm actually going to give you those reasons. And we're going to have a very long, drawn out discussion about this today. Obviously, for everything that's going on in America, really worldwide, but America has a very unique history attached to it. So I'm definitely going to focus on America today. And I just want to start off with a disclaimer that basically says, obviously not all. Okay? So obviously, when we're addressing the races quite specifically, obviously not all. And that has to be said, I think, because I think far too often when we have this discussion, we're very quick to generalize everybody. And I just don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right. So that's going to be the overall disclaimer. Obviously, not all. But if it were so few, we wouldn't be here having the discussion today, right? So, but it still remains to be said, you have to say that. Obviously not all, okay? So welcome everyone as you fill into the room. We're going to have a very complex discussion this afternoon. And I actually don't know if we'll get to the back half. It depends on how long the front half takes, okay? So let me get my screens readjusted here. Today, we're talking about racism and police brutality in the United States of America. Very, very sore subject. Not an easy one to talk about. Not at all. So let me get my screen set up. Welcome to everyone in the chat. Woo! I'm nervous. I'm nervous, but we're doing this today because I feel like part of what my job is and where I fit in to this overall discussion is not to add fuel to the fire. So hopefully you guys can tell from my content, my goal is never to just rile you up for no reason. Like if I'm getting you peppered up about something, it's because there is an action I need you to take or an action I believe can be taken. So a big part of me operates off of the belief that something can be done. Okay. Anytime I feel like there's really nothing that can be done to resolve a specific issue, I actually tend to avoid talking about it. Because to me, all you're really doing is agitating and making it worse. You're actually not helping when you're not attaching some sort of solution, option, pathway, a vision for what you want instead. So oftentimes when I hear this conversation happening, I don't hear the vision piece attached to it. We'll get into it. I'm getting way ahead of myself, but why don't we go ahead and open up this live stream with a little bit of a revelation, one that is probably not a surprise to many of you, but I actually think that this might come as a surprise to some of you. So let's start. Hey guys, guess what? I'm Black. What? What? She's a Black. Oh my God, what? PTE is Black. Did you know that? Did you guys know that already? I'm just curious before we move on, who already knew that in the chat? I gotta know before we move on. But yes, guys, I am Black. I am Black. I identify as African American. Specifically, if we want to get very specific, American descendants of slaves, ADOS, ADOS. Okay, you knew that? It's so funny to me because over the years, people would ask, but I would never confirm it. Never. I would not confirm it. And the reason is because once people know you're Black, it puts everything you do in a filter, right? Because initially, sometimes, and really when I was growing up, people would tell me all the time, you talk like a white girl. You talk like a white girl. Oh, you speak like a white girl. And I'm like, I cannot help how I speak. I can't help it. It's how I was raised. It's how I was brought up. And from a biological standpoint, it's my understanding that your speech patterns are pretty much set by a certain age. So you're asking me to become something other than what I am. This is who I am, right? So that's why I felt like people would ask, like, are you Black? Because they can't tell from the way that I speak. And I recognize that some of my dialect and some of the way that I speak does come off as a little bit Valley girl sometimes. I get that. But trust me, there's a difference between this and like this, Becky. Yeah. Like, oh my God. I hope you could like totally like hear the difference between how I'm talking like right now and how I normally speak. Right. I consider it proper. And then my personal philosophy is if I'm trying to get a message out to you, I'm trying to communicate it as clearly as possible. I'm not thinking in terms of culture, like, oh, let me set this up how a white person would say it to make sure they understand. I'm like, no, you speak English, I speak English. I'm going to put these words out as clear as I possibly can so you will understand. That's always been my theory, right? I'm very much a purist on language, but as I've shared with you all before, I can be Southern, very much so. Very much so, right? But this is my default, and I make no apologies for it. But yes, I am an African-American woman. So for those of you trying to spot me out in public, at least now you know who you're looking for. This is so funny to me. It feels good to finally tell you guys and confirm it. Like, yes, I am Black. Okay. No island, I'm not pulling from anywhere else. I did do my ancestry DNA, and I can't remember everything off the top of my head, but I think I'll share that with you guys one day. I think that might actually be interesting. So I think I also have to say that before we have this conversation, because I think that that does put it in some perspective for you, who's speaking and where they're kind of coming from. Okay. Now, with that said, actually, I'm getting way ahead of myself. That's at the end of this presentation. Let's continue. But yes, hello, hi. I am a Black woman. Welcome. Surprise. Surprise, you guys. And shout out to those of you who've known all along. That's hilarious to me. So let's continue. The issue of race and racism. The Southern accent comes out when I get mad, right? Yes, it does, very much so. When y'all get me worked out, oh, all the proper drops, out the window, right? So this is funny. This is fun. All right. So this is a complex, complicated issue, right? With historical components, systemic components. On top of that, it's compounding daily. So it's not like we're trying to fix one thing that happened in the past. These issues seem to compound as each day passes, right? And also, from my humble opinion, this is something that cannot be cured. So, and once again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Part of the reason I don't talk about it much is because I think we're taking the wrong approach, but we'll get there, okay? And also because I think it's incurable. You can't cure that. You can't cure it. So when we are fighting and marching and yelling and screaming and protesting, I believe in all of that. I'm very much shake the table, make some noise. But at the same time, if you're taking the wrong approach in the battle, you're not going to win. And you're trying to cure a fundamentally fucked up mind. And I apologize for using that language, but that's what it is. You cannot cure this. So it's kind of like if you're trying to treat an illness, but you keep treating the wrong thing, you will never get better. Never. Okay? So these are the reasons I really don't talk about it from this specific angle. I'm taking this specific angle today because so much is going on. There's deep unrest. People are very unhappy, and rightfully so. But that unhappiness is going to continue, and it's going to feel like there's no way forward if we don't start looking at it through different eyes. Okay? Now, part of being a Black woman and being in the Black community often means that if you don't have the same perspective, you are eligible for outcast. And those are just simple facts. I'm sorry, that's the truth. So if you don't always align 100%, not that you're going against the cause, that you're saying, hey, let's look over here also. You run the risk of being kicked out. I'm not kidding. Okay. So we're going to have a long, complicated discussion today. Okay. Long and complicated. I'm looking at the at the comments. This is so funny to me. You guys already knew. I'm like, they don't know. It's a big secret. Girl, they know you're Black. Come on. Come on. Get serious. Well, welcome. And shout out to those of you who've been coming all along and have always known. Like, I think it would be really sad to lose subscribers. Like, oh, she's Black? Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Like, okay, well, then you're racist. That's exactly what we're talking about. Like, if that changes how you feel suddenly, like for the worst, then that's exactly what we're talking about. But I have faith in my subbies that won't happen. But you'd be surprised. But let's move on. So, now I can have much more real conversations with you guys. Now we can really talk now. So anyway, Why I rarely discuss it specifically on this channel. I've already told you a little bit, but let me tell you more. One, and I felt this way since I was a child. Ever since I learned what racism was, my first and response, and still to this day, has always been, well, that's silly. That's stupid. So wait a minute. They hate certain groups of people because of their skin color? What? Well, that's dumb. And like, I know that's such a simple conclusion to come to, but that's kind of the way I've always felt about it. And I'm like, you got to be retarded. And I apologize for using that term as well. I know it's not politically correct. I'm sorry. Okay. Just let me speak free today. Just let today be the day I speak freely. Okay. Something's got to be wrong with you if you would rate someone based on something they literally have no control over. So to me, it's always been really, really stupid. Like, and to me, anyone who would have the courage to openly identify as racist is also identifying themselves as truly ignorant and truly uneducated and stupid, and not someone I'd want to be associated with, right? Now, as I've gotten older, I recognize that it's not about me feeling like it's stupid, because it is. It's about the fact that those attitudes have consequences that roll outward to society. So if those attitudes were only contained like in their house or in their little church group, we really wouldn't have a problem, right? It's like, okay, well, that's really dumb, but you're over there. The problem is these attitudes start working their way up the ladder and influencing great amounts of people. And therein lies the issue, okay? We're going real slow. We're taking it real slow, okay? Very, very slowly. Here we go. Now, the argument that we often have in the public sphere regarding racism, in my opinion, and police brutality, is exceptionally short-sighted. It's exceptionally short-sighted because it is not examining. Oh God, I have so much to say, y'all. It's so, okay. It's a short-sighted argument because it's not taking into effect the totality of the situation. What I mean by that is when we say, you know, please value us, please treat us with respect, please treat us with kindness. Well, yes, of course we want that. But let's say what we call racism ended tomorrow, right? First of all, how would you measure that? You can't, because racism lives in the mind. It's put into practice, but it lives in the mind. And that to me has always been one of the biggest problems. You might know somebody who's 100% racist, but they treat you with equality and fairness and dignity, and you would never know that they were actually racist. You see what I mean? I hope that makes sense, because this is kind of what I'm trying to get at. Even if outwardly and by all accounts, this person has dealt fairly, honestly, given equal opportunities, never treated anyone in a biased way, serves all customers equally and fairly, could be 100% racist still. It lives in the mind, okay? So to me, you're fighting a battle that dwells within the mind of a person, and that's a battle you can't win, because they could tell you all day, I'm no longer racist. Okay. Do you know if that's true? You'll never know if it's true because you don't live in their head. So the argument to me is just ever so slightly short-sighted, but we'll get there. Also, and this is all under the category of why I rarely discuss, these topics, when presented how they typically are, tend to lead to a rapid deterioration of that particular channel. So any channel that you know that discusses race as a primary topic, they may have a lot of subs, but the spirit of the channel has fallen, and it just leads to rapid deterioration, primarily because it's circular. Now, I will say this. I do think there are a lot of content creators out there who intend for it to be circular like that. Because with no solutions being offered, if you start to offer solutions, eventually it'll get solved. And where's your content? Will you have any more content to make? So it's great to keep stirring the pot, stir the pot, stir the pot, stir the pot, with nowhere to go and nowhere to put all this anger, because it just keeps the views coming in. And I just don't believe in that. I don't believe in stirring the pot with no end in sight. Okay. Moving on. Like I was saying, it's circular. So when an argument is circular, it just keeps going around and around in circles. Okay. I don't like circular arguments. Also, we get into the one cause fallacy, which is what I was talking about earlier. Now, I mentioned this and kind of alluded to this a couple live streams ago, where I was saying that it was on the schizophrenia live stream, where I was saying that when you just start to point to one thing as a cause only, you overlook all the other potential causes that could be equally as important. It's not that you're wrong. It's that what else could be happening also that could be contributing to this. When you refuse to look at the other factors and focus on just the one, you will never move forward. You'll never make progress, because there could be other things contributing to it. If you're driving a car across country and it keeps breaking down on you, and you're like, I know it's this timing belt. You replace the timing belt. Keep going another couple miles, boom, craps out again. You go replace the timing belt again. And you're like, well, I know it's got to be this timing belt. It's not the timing belt. You needed an oil change. It's not the timing belt. It's some other fuse that's blown. You see what I mean? You have to examine the whole picture. If you don't, you will never move off that block. And that's why we're not getting anywhere. Because yes, racism is real in this country. Yes, it has been documented. Yes, there is a history, a very tangible track record history to racism in this country. There's no denying it. Does it still exist today? Yes, absolutely. But we've been focused on racism for quite some time now, and we still haven't resolved it. Why is that? Two reasons. One, it lives in the mind. And two, there are other factors contributing to these things that we're not looking at. We're overlooking them. So part of what I would like to do today is bring forth what I feel some of those things are being overlooked, so we can have a more comprehensive conversation about this. It's okay, puppy. See, y'all, I've gotten my puppy upset with this topic already. Okay. Moving on, we're almost there. I told y'all this is a long walk. This is going to be a very long walk. Okay. Why I rarely discuss proof. We do have the documented historical and current proof, right? However, in the law, there is something that refers to the inner workings of the mind. And it essentially says that you cannot attest to the inner workings of someone else's mind. And you cannot. The only way that you can prove a person is racist or has been racist is if they say out of their mouth or post on their social media racist things. It's okay, puppy. Like, I know y'all saw, well, you may not have because it got scrubbed. So, oh God, I'm getting ahead of myself. Here we go. A couple weeks ago, two teenagers made a video and they put it on TikTok. And the premise of the video is this: it's what a person is made of, right? Or what a whatever is made of. I won't use the term they use because they actually use the N word. What a N word is made of. So picture like a pot. And picture like you're putting ingredients into a pot, right? So the ingredients they put in were like fatherless home, criminal record, lazy. And then like they went to pour in responsible, and then they like pulled it back, like not that. Like dead serious, right? Put it on TikTok, 100% serious. That to me would be an example of outward, we can call you a racist with no problem. We can call you that. because you have actually put it out, documented it for the world to see. Now, that video got scrubbed from the internet, which I find quite interesting. Why won't you leave it up? Leave it up. Leave it up for the world to see. Leave it up for it to follow them for the rest of their lives. But it's been scrubbed. You can hardly find it anywhere, right? That's what I mean by proof. That's proof to me. But when other situations occur and we don't have proof, it's so hard to attest to the inner workings of someone else's mind. You can't. So oftentimes when convictions are being sought out on the basis of a race crime, it's almost always not going to go through because you cannot prove that unless that attorney can find a track record of it. You can't prove it. It doesn't mean it's not true. It means it can't be proven. And proof is what's important. That's why I said the battle, the angle at which the battle is being fought is not a good angle because you can't hardly prove it. You can't. Okay? Finally, why I rarely discuss. To me, there's only a couple of solutions, many of which people won't like. So it's like, here's how I feel. How I feel right at this point. Is this a battle? Is this a battle we're going to keep fighting in America for the next 100 years? Is it worth it to fight in another 100 years? We've already had 100. So is it worth it to fight another 100 for something so fundamental and basic? We're not fighting for skyscrapers and flying cars. We're fighting for basic human rights. Still is my thing. So to me, the time to fix this has passed. Okay, so now we're moving off why I rarely discuss. So now let's actually get into the meat and potatoes. Okay, welcome to everyone in the chat. I see the chat rolling, just glancing at it, but I'll dig into it after the show. Okay, now here's the thing, and I'm torn, y'all, and I'll tell you why I'm torn. There's a part of me that doesn't think it's anywhere near as bad as the media puts on. And then there's a part of me that believes it's actually worse than I could ever imagine. So I'm kind of torn between those two worlds. Okay. When I go out and about in public, I don't feel the effects of overt racism or even passive, really. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That doesn't mean people aren't thinking certain things about me and just not acting on them or saying them, right? So that drifts me over into the, is it as bad as people say, right? But then there's a part of me that believes it might actually be worse than I could ever possibly imagine or dream of, right? And I'm torn. At any rate, what we're seeing, what we see on social media, in the news, what's being presented, in my opinion, has moved past the point of no return, which is part of the reason I rarely discuss it. Why would you discuss something you don't think can be resolved or concluded? There are very few resolutions to the situation, right? And then you have multiple situations brewing at the same time. So, oh man. Many live streams ago, I said that there are many issues to be solved, but they have to be put in order, right? And everyone is shouting their cause from different corners, and everyone wants their issue addressed first. And you just can't do everything first. You can't. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, collectively, as a people, and I'm talking to Black, white, Spanish, Asian, and everyone else in between, what is it that we want exactly? What are we striving for? What is the ultimate goal as we coexist in this country? What is the goal, right? We have to answer that question, because without the answer to that question, this is going to remain an unresolvable issue, 100%. Okay. And I'm a very solution-based person and explanation-based person. If I can't solve it, I at least like to explain it. So I feel like so far I've kind of explained it, but we're going to go a little further. But understand that truly in my heart, I don't feel like it's resolvable, because so many people want to keep it alive. The racism is what I mean. Okay. And it's bad, y'all. I know a lot of you don't spend time, in comment sections on different websites and things. I do. I spend a lot of time down in those comment sections. And it's shocking to read some of the things that you read. And it's like, wow, if these are the inner thoughts of people, because of course no one's using their real name. So if these are the inner thoughts of people, we're screwed, you guys. I believe in honesty, and I like to be honest with you, and I tell you when we're screwed. Okay. I'm getting way ahead of myself and probably not making a lot of sense. So let me back up. Let me just use my list, because that's what it's here for, to keep my mind orderly and in check. Let me just glance over. Okay. All right. So we'll never get rid of anything if we don't understand what the problem really is. So now let's really get into the meat and potatoes of this, okay? First of all, what is racism? We all kind of know what racism is. The official definition, which is not on the screen, it's off screen. Where's my mouse? Here you go. The official definition is prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. It goes further. It says racism is the belief that groups of humans possess different behavioral traits corresponding to physical appearance and can be divided based on the superiority of one race or another. Now, that's the official definition. My definition is racism is the belief that one's existence is more worthy of existence than another's, and one's needs supersede the rights and needs of others on the basis of race alone. Everything else falls out from there, okay? And I truly believe that. So to me, the root of your racism problem is narcissism. And I know some of you might think, oh, you connect everything back to narcissism. I've been meaning to do a video for a while called All Roads Lead to Narcissism, because all the negative roads, the things that we're having problems out of society with, they do. When you really stop to think about what narcissism is, how could racism not be born out of narcissism, right? I am supreme. I am the most important. You are beneath me. You serve me. You're supposed to serve me. If I don't get my way, I have a tantrum, kick and scream. I'll go out of my way to dominate you, conquer you, put you beneath me and under me. Right? The root, and isn't it interesting that it ends in ism? I need to look that up. Seems like everything negative ends in an ism. Racism, narcissism, excuse me. Okay? So I guess what I'm trying to say is your racists are also your narcissists to the nth degree. Okay? And yes, narcissists come in other formats, including non-racist formats. Okay? And narcissists come in every race. I just need to make that clear. Okay? Every race. I need to make that abundantly clear. Okay? But when I'm saying it, we're talking about black and white right now. And that's not to the exclusion of the other races and cultures. It's just that black and white have had a lot of contention in the United States of America. Okay? So let me be even more clear, because people love to hear what they want to say. I'm not saying that all narcissists are white people. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying in this segment here is that the white people who happen to be racist are also narcissists. How could you not be? Think about it. And think about how else that probably comes out in their day-to-day lives. They're probably bad people in general towards other people, right? And the thing about narcs is they eat each other. We talked about them being cannibals in the last live stream. So here's my question to you. If they'll cannibalize each other, why would you ever think they would stop and give you pause? So that kind of goes back to my original discussion of why I don't talk about it much, is because I don't expect anything less from you. Anyone who is ignorant enough to identify as a racist, I wouldn't expect anything less from you. I wouldn't. This is what you do. I don't expect a change out of you. The only thing I expect out of you is to play by the rules. And when you don't, that's what they make lawsuits for. That's what they make lawsuits for. I don't get emotional about it. And I think this is where I would get in trouble with my own community, because I think what's wanted is the emotion, the tears, the pain, the writhing. And it's not that it's not upsetting. It's very upsetting. But it's that in my mind, where we've come now is, oh, you don't have to like me because I'm Black. That's fine. That is fine. But guess what you are going to do? You are going to play by the rules. Oh, yes, you are. And if you choose not to, that's what they make attorneys and lawyers and courts for. That's what they make hashtags for. So if you really want those kinds of problems on your hands, by all means. But it's like, I'm not hurt by it because I think it's silly. Like, wow, that's a really stupid reason not to like someone. Like, if you're going to dislike me because of something I've actually done. You see what I mean? But if you're prejudging and dislike me on race alone, well, you're an idiot. So you and your idiotic ass play by the rules, or you'll get sued and exposed. And that's how I feel about it. My heart is not broken. I never expected love from a racist. Do you see what I mean? Never. Like, why would you expect love from a racist? I don't get it. Okay. So kind of along, and then the question, how do you cure narcissism? As we've discussed many times on this channel, there is no cure to narcissism. Medical science hasn't found a way yet to cure it. So if A equals B, if you're a racist, you're definitely a narcissist for sure. And B equals C, narcissism can't be cured. Well, then A equals C, racism cannot be cured. Because, and moving on to this next point, you don't make the mental shift from humans as property to equal citizens overnight or ever. You don't make that mental leap, because you have to ask yourself, what would make you make that mental leap in the first place? What would ever enable your mind to consider another human being property on the basis of race alone? Now, I know in the past, like there were things, what were they called? Prisoners of war. So people go in, conquer a city, they take prisoners of war, right? It would be one thing if the slaves were of a diverse race. They have, in America, I'm talking about 400 years ago. So 400 years ago, white slaves, Black slaves, Latin slaves, Asian slaves, all types. It would be different if the plantations were completely mixed. Like, hey, we just enslaved you as a person because you were enslavable, right? We don't care what race you are. We have taken you and now you work for us. That's different. It's still barbaric, but different. But to specifically hone in on one, like, oh, well, they're subhuman anyway, it's fine. You see? So what I'm trying to say is, for a person's mind to ever be okay with that, you cannot expect that mind to come out of that. You can't. Because this is the same mind who also felt like women were subhuman also. And I think racists forget that. So anytime I run into a racist female, I'm like, you do realize that you also were considered subhuman before they gave you voting rights as well. And you do realize that they actually want to take your rights away. You do know that, right? Because these things walk hand in hand. Oh, I forgot to put that on here. So the same men who considered Black people subhumans in property also considered women property, white women, all women, right? Then you had to fight for your right to be seen as a full human being, as a woman. So how a woman could ever be racist in alignment is beyond me, because they've got to understand that it's all linked up. It all goes hand in hand. It's the belief that someone is below you. Do you understand? Anyone. The belief that you're above someone. That's rooted in narcissism. So the fact that Black people and people of color have had to fight for basic human rights and dignities, women have had to fight for basic human rights and dignities, this should start to paint a picture for us of what we're actually dealing with. You see? It's not a simple fix. It's not. I actually don't think it can be, but y'all are not going to like my solutions. So let's move on. Okay. So we've already kind of talked about this. Actually, let me glance at the comments really quick, because by the end, I'm not going to be able to see these for hours. So I just want to take a quick scroll through your comments. Give me 1 second. Welcome to everybody. Says PTE has her object constancy intact. Thank you. That is a high compliment. I take that as a very high compliment. Thank you so much. Let me see. All right, I'm scrolling. All right, doesn't look like you guys are too upset with me yet. So that's good, because I do not seek to upset. It's just that I recognize that my viewpoint is not always accepted because it's not upset enough, I guess you could say. It's not hurt enough. And I'm operating from a position of F you, really. Like, okay, you don't like me because I'm Black. That's your problem. You're going to play by these rules, though. And if you don't, then we're going to talk about it publicly. Like, there's options. Like, I feel like let me stop. Let me just keep going. Let's get into the issue. So like I said, you cannot cure racism. You can only legislate it. Now, here's what I do believe. You can only legislate it, which it has been to some degree, right? But let's talk a little bit about what legislating that would look like. So part of the reason that I advocate so heavily in corporate cults for the different things that I do, but one of the main things I advocate for is you have to lay out what it is you want from me. You have to be clear with your expectations, because to me, as we've already discussed, I can't prove whether or not you're racist. I can't. But what I can prove is whether or not you're holding me to the same standard you're holding everyone else. So what are the standards? See, this is how we insulate ourselves from these things. So for my Caucasian and white listeners listening, for those of you who have positions of power, who are not racist, and I wouldn't expect you to be listening to my channel, but the way you insulate against racists sneaking into your organization is you make sure you are crystal clear on things. Murky waters get murky. You understand? So when you outline and have clear policies, clear procedures, clear structure, it's very hard to get away with treating other people different when you're all supposed to be held to the same set of standards. When there are no standards, anything goes. You understand? So this is how you protect and insulate from those who will slip in with racist attitudes and mindsets, right? Because it's a simple conversation. Well, did she do this? Yes. Did she do that? Yes. Did she do that? Yes. So what's the problem? Oh, well, I just don't know if she's happy. Well, happiness isn't on the list. It looks like she's actually meeting all of her goals. So I'm going to need you to get out of my office now. Come back to me when you have an actual problem. Okay. All right. Elaborate accountability systems. in the workplace, outside of the workplace. Part of what has happened and part of what has taken place is accountability in this country has fallen apart because the president of the United States doesn't hold himself accountable. He's a lawless man. He does pretty much whatever he wants. So now it emboldens people. That word is very important. Emboldened. The racists that live within the Republican Party feel emboldened. Do you understand? So where they didn't feel comfortable doing certain things before, now because accountability is so low, they know there's a lot they can get away with that will be swept under the rug because the president gets away with this type of stuff, this type of speech, this type of behavior. You see what I mean? So we have got to restore our accountability systems. Let me see if I can find the comment. Oh, did I take a screenshot? It basically said that the reason America used to work is because it held itself to a rule of law. And when the rule of law fell, it became a lawless nation. And that was a comment on one of the live streams recently. And I screenshotted it somewhere. I can't find it right now. Oh, shame on me. Oh, well. But the point is, the rule of law is gone. So without that, and without people being in fear of the law, which is supposed to be neutral and serve everyone, a lot of bad behavior sprouts up and takes root and takes place. There need to be elaborate accountability systems, many of which function with a third-party type element to it, meaning, no, you can't hold yourself accountable. No, the department is not going to do an internal investigation. No, we'll be sending in a third party. Thank you. Right? We have to restore accountability and mean it. Okay? Going back to you can't cure it, you can only legislate it. We have to remain vigilant of unfairness. This goes for everybody. Because unfairness for one leads to unfairness for all eventually, okay? So this is for, that one is really for my Caucasian and white listeners, okay? And other. What I mean by that is, you may not be racist. If you watch my channel, I wouldn't think that you were. I really wouldn't, right? You don't tolerate it. You know what I mean? You would never support that. You don't associate with racists, right? But something could be happening. Here's how you look out for your Black brothers and sisters in your vicinity. Here's how you look out. I'm just going to use the workplace because you guys know that's where I've had a lot of unique experiences with narcissists, right? If you see a young Black woman, young Black male, whoever, getting bullied, low key, getting ostracized, low key getting kind of gaslit, if that makes sense. This is where you come in. This is where you have to speak up and say, listen, I've worked with this person. I can only attest from my experiences, but they have been thorough, professional, friendly. You know, I can't let you guys put this on their name. I can't. I will not stand for it. When you see the bullying taking place, you have to stand up for it. And it tends to come in a format of, or layered and coded in words like, he or she doesn't have a positive attitude. I don't think he or she is happy here. Things of that nature. That's the coding that it comes in. Because usually, generally, the work product is not bad. Now, I would never ask you to stand up for somebody who's not doing the right thing. I don't care what race they are. If they're goofing off, slacking off, lazy, unethical, I would never ask you to stand up for someone who's being unethical. Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is when you can kind of see it happening and you know it's happening, you see it, you feel it, but you quietly sit at your desk. That's where we need you. That's the advocacy. That's where it comes out. Because it happens covertly in the workplace because nobody is dumb enough to say it out loud. Nobody is that stupid, right? And my other ask of you would be this: if you see it happening, if you speak out and your concerns are swept under the rug, or even worse, now you're treated differently for speaking out, my ask of you would be to find a way to find another place of employment. Don't prop them up with your effort and your work, because you see what they'll do. You see what they'll do to them. It's coming for you eventually. And that's where this quote comes in right here. First, they came for the communists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. You see? So another way you might be able to set this up is, first they came for the call center reps, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a call center rep. Then they came for the girls in HR, but I didn't speak out because I wasn't the girls in HR. I'm having trouble walking the ladder here. You guys get my point? Then they finally made their way around to me. So I guess what I'm saying is, if any organization is comfortable treating a person or a group of people unfairly or differently, it's only a matter of time before it works its way up to you, because you must remember they are cannibals. They're cannibals. So if they will cannibalize each other, what makes you think you're safe? Okay? So that is my humble request and my humble ask. Because so often we do feel very alone in these spaces, very alone, with nobody to have our back. So if you see it, you have to speak out. You have to say something. Okay? Now let's get into some of the more controversial fixes for all of this. Again, full transparency, I personally don't believe it can be fixed. And I know that's not optimistic. And I know that we are supposed to be optimistic, because if you don't think it can be fixed, is it worth the fight, right? This is just where I've landed in 2020. After many years of experience, I just don't think it's something that can be repaired, because to me, it's such an easy fix. So if we can't make an easy fix, then maybe it can't be fixed. And you're also dealing with profound mental illness and persistence at a high level. But if we were going to make attempts at fixing this, here's just a few things that I could recommend that could be a start for repairing relations in this country, okay? First things first, you have to repair what was broken as a start to begin with, okay? That starts with reparations. Yes, it does. And I know a lot of people are uncomfortable with that conversation. They don't like it. They don't want to talk about it. They shoot it down immediately. My only issue with reparations is it needs to be outlined a little bit better, right? So this is my attempt at I should have made these like sub bullets. Let's just do that. Boom. Let's make these sub bullets so it makes more sense. So when people think of reparations, they think just cutting a check. You just want us to cut a check? We can't just cut a check. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But that's not what I'm talking about, though. A check is a piece of it, but it's not what I'm talking about. But you can print it out and cut it. You just did, to the tune of trillions of dollars for these major corporations and companies. Yes, you can. Make it happen. Make it happen, right? But I'm not talking about a check alone, because to me, that's extremely short-sighted as well. And you guys know that I'm all about the long term, okay? But you have to account for the delay. You have to. You have to account for the things like redlining that blocked African-American and Black homeowners from purchasing homes in certain neighborhoods, which did what? It pushed them into concentrated neighborhoods, in particular the ghettos, which did what? Created little sub pockets that have now blown out of control, right? And now people can't escape it, right? That's what that did. We have to We have to connect the dots. When we tell the story, you can't just tell one piece and say, redlining happened where they were purposely blocking out homeowners from this neighborhood. Correct. And what did that cause? It caused them to be funneled into certain areas. Correct. And what did that cause? Limited access to certain jobs that were in other parts of the city. Right. And what did that cause? You see, you have to tell the whole story, right? You have to account for the delay. Everyone loves to talk about the economic gap. There's a different term they use. Economic gap, not the equality gap. How is it said correctly? Dang, how is it said correctly? I want to say it correctly. But the growing economic disparity, right? So basically, middle class is being wiped out. You're having rich and poor in this country, right? Which is also a side effect of capitalism, but we're not here to talk about that today. You have to account for the delay, because when a lot of your contrarian right-wingers go against things like reparations, of course, they pull out you need to work for what you have. Oh, slavery is over. Oh, that was 400 years ago. Oh, we're not racist. We're all equal now. Like, they pull out all these cards, right? But no one wants to do the math and very simply say to them, you have to account for the delay. There was a delay. And guess what was happening in that delay? Businesses were being set up. Businesses like Ford, what's another major company that's been around for like 100 years? I can't think of any. Johnson & Johnson. I don't know when they were started. You get my point, though. My point is, when the major resources were being formed up and those contracts were being built and those pipelines were being formed, by the time Black people were technically allowed to pursue those types of things, they were already set in place. Do you understand what I'm trying to say to you? So you have to account for the delay. You have to account for that gap in old money. How can you compete with old money? You can't. You can't compete with old money. I don't care. They say what? Kanye is a billionaire now. It doesn't matter. Kanye's billionaire can't compete with old money. You can't. He's a billionaire. Okay. Compete with 10 billion, 5 billion, 30 billion, 100 billion. Compete with that. You can't compete with old money, honey. So it's not that we're saying we want to be as rich. We want every Black person in the country to be a billionaire. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you have to account for that gap, the delay, right? And again, this is all under the topic of how we would even begin to approach fixing the race relations. But I think that would go very far to serve as, number one, an acknowledgement, and number two, an apology. Because believe it or not, and I might get in trouble for saying this, I do think a lot of white people are sorry for what happened. I do. I don't think they're all cold and calculating and malicious and racist. And I do not believe that. I'm sorry. And if that gets me in trouble with my community, I'll just have to take that heat. I don't believe that. I do think that a lot of them are sorry. I do think that a lot of them don't know what to do right now. They want to help. They want to fix it. They know they're not racist. They don't know what move to make. Okay. So I think it's not that one individual white person can pay reparations, but the conversations can start to chatter along the lines of, it serves as an apology, right? It's an apology. We are sorry for what happened. We're sorry. And here's how we're going to begin to make it up, right? So then, like I said, to me, reparations is not just a check, because I'm here to tell you, and I hate to say this, those checks would be burned up within a couple years because there's no plan behind them. There has to be a plan in place with this money, or else it will just out into the ether, right? Oh, let me add one. What's the word? Debt forgiveness. Debt. So here's how else that looks. You all know well, actually, you all may not know because some of you weren't around last year. You may be new to the channel. Thank you for the super chat, Best Life. It says, thank you for connecting the dots between racism and narcissism. You're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank y'all for hearing me out. This has been a very hard conversation for me to finally have. I've been meaning to for a while, but it's tough. It's hard, y'all. It's a tough conversation. Here's how else that can look. So some of you know my struggle with trying to buy a house last year, right? And I detailed it. And some of you in the comments were like, yeah, it probably didn't help that you were African American woman either. And I never confirmed. I might have hearted the comment, which I hope told you something. But I never flat out confirmed that, because to me, racism is never the first answer. To me, single woman was the first answer. The fact that I'm a single woman trying to buy a house was the first answer, right? But yeah, and someone else made a comment on that video. It probably hurts from a legacy perspective as well, because your ancestors probably had trouble purchasing homes. And I'm like, God, if you only knew how correct you were. If I was ready to confirm that to you right now, I would. But that person was correct who said that. Yeah, it really hurt. It's like, this is the dream. Like, this is what they wanted so bad. And I couldn't pull it off. You know what I mean? And the way the system is set up, not just against a young, or let me rephrase, not just against a Black person, because there's lots of Black homeowners, like tons of young Black homeowners, but just in general, for a young person, for a young woman, and a young Black woman, like, it just sucked. I'm like, am I ever going to get to live this dream? Ever? Is that ever going to be something accessible to me? Right? So how we go about fixing that are things like housing vouchers. Like, hey, as a part of overall reparations, you're not going to have a lot of difficulty getting into a house. Now, yes, you still have to show income and things. That we're not just going to give you a free house, and nobody's asking you for a free house. That would be a nice touch, but nobody's asking you for a free house. We want the barriers removed, right? Like, oh, if y'all understood the difference of someone who comes from a launch pad of money versus someone who does not, night and day. It's the difference between being able to have a parent co-sign for you to buy a house and not. It's the difference between your parent being able to give you $20,000, $30,000 cash, no loan. That's a gift. It's the difference between your parent being able to give you a $30,000 cash down payment and not. Do you understand? It's different. Like, so many Black people in this country, we are first generation, fill in the blank. First generation college, first generation, fill in the blank. First, that is important. First generation. I'm going to make a confession. Sometimes when I see things like, celebrate this person, they're the first Black judge in the blank blank district. I'm like, to me, that's not an accomplishment. And I'll tell you why I feel that way. Why are we still on firsts in the year 2020? We should be like on third or fourth by now, fourth or fifth. The fifth Black judge in that district. The first one happened 60 years ago. We're still on first. It irritates me. It bothers me. It really does. And I'm like, it's great that it finally happened, but wow, like, and there's probably going to be a massive gap between that one and the next one. So to me, like, it's not as inspirational as it should be, because it's still showing the climb that's so difficult when it shouldn't be. We have the technology now to not be this far behind. Okay. So now moving on, UBI, which is Universal Basic Income. Obviously, I would want that for everybody, all races. But I think it's something that's needed in particular for the Black community, because it's the one thing we've never actually had. Okay. where and we talked about this the last live stream. Y'all, I'm still so angry about what we were talking about last time. The fact that they looked out for these companies and they looked out for these corporations and they bailed them out. I heard one person put it this way. It's like they're rewarding bad management, because keep in mind, some of these companies were already failing. Boeing got bailed out. Boeing was already tanking because of all those plane crashes last year. They got bailed out. So it's like the way it feels for us is that some people can make all the mistakes in the world and they are padded, they are protected from their own mistakes, from their bad management, from their bad decisions. They are protected. Whereas some of us have no insulation whatsoever. So to me, UBI, I consider this insulation. So if a right winger happens to stumble across this video and actually happens to listen this far into it, understand that nobody wants to sit at home all day. Clearly, you guys just showed that. My God. They kept you home for a few weeks. Y'all were flipping out. Nobody wants to sit around at home all day and do nothing. Nobody. People actually like to work. And here's the thing. Will some people never return to your business? Yeah, they're not coming back because you treated them like shit. They're not coming back. You didn't treat them right. They were already planning on quitting on you when all this happened. So don't think that just because they're getting unemployment or might one day get UBI, they're not coming to work for you because they're just lazy. No, you're probably a horrible boss. Know that. I need you to know that in your heart. Okay? Because that's the first step to change. Know that if they're not coming back, you were probably a horrible boss. But anyway, what UBI would do for a person like me is when I'm working full time, essentially I'm using that money to pay my credit card bills, pay different little things. I might make that my utility bill. So I'm paying my electric, not utility bill because it wouldn't be that big. You guys get my point. Hey, I pay this, I pay that, I pay little things, tuck some away for savings because I'd be saving some of my UBI check, doing a little bit more in my city because I have just a little bit more disposable income. So all these businesses y'all were crying about, some people can actually go to now because they actually have spending money, right? So it creates a situation where you have people who are employed. They just have extra spending money now. Some will blow it. That is to be expected. But a lot of people are going to be very diligent with that money. It is insulation. Okay? It removes the dependence. So I know a lot of right-wingers hate the different social support programs that are really there to keep your country from falling into anarchy. They hate that type of stuff. This is how people can get off of that. Because to me, sometimes it seems like you just want people to starve to death, right? So moving on a similar thread, universal healthcare for everyone, but it does benefit the Black community in particular because so often it's difficult to deal with a heavily narcissistic, potentially racist boss. It's hard. It's hard often for us. And so often we find ourselves without a job because some of us just refuse to take it. So healthcare is needed always, though. Listen, some of us refuse to take it. Don't get me started, y'all. Now that we've opened this can of worms. But universal healthcare. So I guess what I'm trying to show you here is that a lot of the things that you could do that help everyone really actually also help the Black community and other minority communities. Just keep in mind, for the sake of simplification, we're talking Black and white today, right? And what does the Bible say? For whatever you've done for the least of these, you've done for me, right? Isn't that what the Bible says? So it's kind of like when you take care of the least, you take care of everybody by default. Do you see? I would never advocate for these things only for the Black community, because to me, that kind of just flip-flops the coin and puts us right back in a downward spiral. Are we trying to be better people or not? Are we trying to act like human beings or not? What's our goal here, right? College should be way more accessible and affordable, okay, under the reparations bill, if not free altogether. And I would be okay with some race specifications there, maybe. Maybe not. We'd have to think through that. We'd have to talk through it. But what you're trying to do is essentially catch a people up. You're not trying to just give out freebies. It's not about freebies. It's about an acknowledgement of the delay. You have to acknowledge the delay, because without that, you almost can't complain about anything. You almost can't. Like, you have to fix the gap. Now, once you fix the gap, you might have a leg to stand on, but probably not. Okay? You have to close the gap. You have to, or you're going to end up in a situation where you have anarchy. Let's move on. Debt forgiveness on a similar thread, right? For the period equivalent to the period it was denied. So some people might say, well, how long would this go on? Well, how long was it denied? For however long it was denied, legally denied, is how long it needs to go on. So that would go for everyone, every Black person already in existence, and any babies born in this period of time. To me, there is an end to it. So it's like, once we've actually closed the gap in the period of time that it was denied, now we're on an equal playing field, or more equal, right? So if it was denied for 400 years, well, it looks like we got 400 years of reparations to do, kids. I know some of you might think that's ridiculous, but I mean, when would you cap it? I don't think it should be endless. I do believe in atonement, meaning there is an end to the atonement. So how long do you think it should be for? Right? Ooh. So these are just a few of the things that can be done to start the healing process, right? Because the conversation really can't be had until the right thing has been done. Think about someone who's wronged you. Think about these narcissists that we talk about all the time. Would you ever allow any of them back into your life without some type of atonement or acknowledgement of the wrong and understanding before you move forward? Same thing. It has to happen, or it remains, and like I was saying earlier, irresolvable problem. And part of the reason I think that we're past the point of no return is that it doesn't appear that any of these things are ever going to happen, unfortunately. I mean, this is high hopes, wishful thinking right here. But this is kind of where the healing would start. You can't just pretend that these things have had no impact long term. The healing has to start somewhere, right? Oh, we're not done. We got more to talk about. We've got more to talk about. Let's keep going. I'm just going to glance at your comments really quick. Welcome to everybody. Hello. I hope I'm doing a good job with this. I'm not sure. It took me a while to get even these thoughts out. So I hope my white viewers don't feel ostracized. You know, that's never my intent. Okay. I just think that we can't ignore the conversation anymore. In a channel like mine, I kind of have to have this conversation. Because it goes lockstep with narcissism. This is one of the end results of narcissism unchecked, gone wild. Okay, let's keep going. I just want to talk really quick. We're still kind of talking about the fixes, right? How do you fix this? Let me pull back that other screen so you can kind of see where we were. So we're under the how to fix. How are we going to fix this? You have to be very aware of underexposure and silos. So a silo in real life is like where they store corn and grain and wheat and things of that nature, and they sit all by themselves. And that's kind of where the analogy comes in. So a silo hypothetically is a group of people or an organization or whatever that's kind of cut off from the rest of the world. And this is a very dangerous situation to be in. To be underexposed, to live in a silo, right? And people will interpret this as an excuse. It's not an excuse, it's a reason. And please know the difference between excuses and reasons, okay? When you live in a silo and when you're underexposed, you really think your world is it. And you really think your world is correct and everyone else's world is wrong, right? If you live in a silo or you're underexposed and you only see the same type of face all day, every day, like you all have to understand how the human mind works to suddenly then, if you're suddenly exposed to someone completely different from you and you grew up in a silo, you can't expect a rational, it's so hard to explain what I'm trying to say. You can't expect sudden understanding is what I'll say. You can't. It's even worse if that silo happens to be racist or happens to be bigoted in some way. It's even worse, right? So you have to understand when you're trying to undo years of programming or years of underexposure, there's a lot of danger in underexposure, right? We don't want our kids to be so aware of the world that they grow up too fast. But we also don't want our kids to be so unaware of the world that when they meet other people, they're like, whoa, who are they? What is that? What are they doing? Why are they doing? And you're in the same country. You see what I mean? I could get that if you traveled abroad and you're just like completely culture shocked. You shouldn't be culture shocked in your own country. So there's value to sitting with your children, kind of walking through like everything really is what I mean. Like, I feel like I'm butchering this. I understand the desire to protect your children and shield them from negative outside influences or what you perceive to be negative. I understand, like, I'll just give you a perfect example. I know a lot of parents don't have TVs in their houses because they don't want their kids to watch TV. I don't blame you at all. I don't blame you one bit. I don't watch TV these days. So I don't know if I had children that I would necessarily suddenly change that and become a TV watcher. But I could see myself sitting down with my children for a couple hours every now and then, being like, let's see what's going on. Oh, look at that person. Do you know who that is? This person does that, and just talk, like exposing them. And I can't, I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Complete cutoff from the world creates situations where people become accidental racists. So just like I believe there are narcissistic fence walkers, people who aren't really narcissists, they just have been that way their whole life, never had anything different to bounce it off of. And then as soon as they're exposed, they change. Same thing. Like, I believe there are accidental racists. And as soon as they realize they're racist, they're like, oh my God, I'm racist. And they change and that's it. And they never go back to it. Comes from underexposure, right? So this is where a lot of the conversation about representation matters. I know that probably irritates people when people get upset over the advertising and the media and things of that nature. Well, it's important that children don't think they live in an all-white country because they don't. In America, anyway, they don't. And if they believe they do, then can you see when they grow up and suddenly this other group is like, hey, we're over here too. It's like, who are you? What do you mean? You see what I mean? Let me keep going before I butcher this. Did you know that most of the incels who have committed public violence are also racist? Did you know that? And did you know that they're also sexist generally as well? Hence the incel. So this is what I mean by underexposure and silos, right? This is what happens. Like, this is just one example. And it's like, it's so interesting to me that those three ride together. They're usually incels, they're usually racist and very, very sexist. Now, how are you racist just because women won't sleep with you? That makes you racist, but it's operating along the same lines of logic. Do you see what I mean? It's the same logic lines. So the same logic lines that make a person racist are the same logic lines that could make a person an incel eventually. Same logic lines that make a person sexist. It's the same lines of logic, right? And typically that comes from underexposure or being in a silo, meaning if you don't ever seek information outside of that little bubble, where is this dog? Oh, here she is. If you don't ever seek information outside of that little bubble, your brain will eventually collapse into this. I hope the scientists are studying this phenomenon. Like, I could get you being angry at the world because women won't sleep with you, but how does that suddenly make you racist? I don't get it. Like, how did those two connect with each other? You just figured, why not, since we're already here? I don't know. So yes, we're still under the how do we fix this category. I believe it can be fixed through bias education and awareness, right? Now, notice I didn't say race education. I didn't say cultural education. I said bias education for a reason, right? And the reason is because a lot of people have biases that actually aren't necessarily racist. But if you can identify the thought pattern that led you to a bias, oftentimes you can identify thought patterns that also lead you to racist conclusions. Do you see what I mean? So for example, I think I've used this example before from a training that was really good. And it was saying how everyone's illness cannot be seen. So it was a bias education training. And like I said, the last time I mentioned this, I'm devastated that I can't remember the name of the company who put it on because I'm desperate to find it because it was that good. Like that, it was exactly, in my opinion, what the country needs right now. It was so good because it made you look at things you don't normally look at. And that was one of them, that people's illnesses aren't always visible. So if an employee or someone is presenting to you saying, hey, I suffer from this particular illness, you can't write it off just because you can't see their suffering. Like, well, you look fine to me. You see what I mean? That simple reasoning, that quick jumping to conclusions quick. Do you see what I mean? Some people aren't necessarily racist. They jump to conclusions too fast. Oh, I should have put this on my list. This list is being made as we're talking, right? And that comes out of things like how you treat your different biases. So if you're a boss, right, and your employee comes to you and says, hey, boss, I just found out I have multiple sclerosis, and he's going to look at you. The one who's struggling with these issues would look at you and go, well, you look fine to me. And it's like, well, it's kind of an internal thing. Like, it's something I'm struggling with in my body. And it's like, your body looks fine to me. You see what I mean by simple thought process, simple conclusion, can't think beyond. Do you see what I mean? That's what this is born out of, this type of stuff. So you have to get into the bias education and awareness. What biases do you hold towards people? What do you really believe about people? And how does that affect your actions towards them? You see? Going back to the fence walkers, we talked about that already. And then finally, racism lives in the policies and procedures. Okay. So it's not always overt. It's not always outward, right? So we have to examine what policies and procedures are in place or not in place that are enabling certain things. Do you see what I mean? The devil is in the details, indeed. So here's another example of that. Like, is a certain policy at a company exclusionary towards a certain group based on like cultural preferences? So for example, drinking is very popular at most modern American companies. It just is, right? But say someone comes from a culture where they don't drink or they're not allowed to drink. The bias education would come in to where you would say to that person, now, do you feel differently about their level of team playerness because they didn't come out for drinks with you? And if the answer inside is yes, that's what you need to fix. Those are the types of things that help you be less biased, less bigoted, and ultimately less racist. But once again, like I said at the start of this thing, I don't think you can fix racism. It lives in the mind. And if your mind has already defaulted and collapsed in that way, I don't think we can pull you out of that. Which is why you have to have healthy policies and procedures, clear, crystal clear, neutral, and not bothering anybody. Good for all. Because if they're not, if they only benefit some, you're going to start to have problems, right? Let me take a breather. Let me glance at this chat. Hello, everybody on a Saturday afternoon. Hope you guys are all okay. I hope I still have subs after this. I hope I'll still have subs. Hi, everybody. I'll have the right subs, right? Which just to make sure everybody understands and nobody walks away unclear, what I mean by having the right subs is everyone who already existed before who doesn't hold racist attitudes and values. So that includes everybody that's been coming. I hope you continue to come unless you're racist. Then we got to work on you a little bit, right? So everyone remains welcome. Just because you found out I'm a Black woman doesn't mean you can't come anymore, okay? Because I actually intend to remain as neutral as I have. Now I can just kind of go in on some issues that actually affects just my community, not dealing with racism at all. Now I can actually talk about them without people being like, you're not even Black. You can't talk about that. Yes, I can. So anyway, I can be a little bit more free now. Anywho, let's keep going. Now let's move on to the second half of our presentation, which is police brutality, right? And I know you guys can already see my thoughts ahead of time, and that's okay. I leave it like that on purpose to stimulate your own thought about my thoughts, right? I'm going to try to move through this a little bit more quickly because we've already been here an hour and a half, but this is a complex subject. Like, by no means do I think this is the only conversation we could have about it, right? So let's talk about police brutality a little bit, okay? So the first question, in full transparency, I have dated a police officer before. He was fine. I don't know what else to tell you, okay? God almighty. Oh my God. He was gorgeous. I don't know what else you want from me. I think you all are asking a little bit too much from me. And he was Black, so he was a Black officer, all right? So full transparency. I would never lie about that. I've already disclosed it on one live stream, disclosing it again, okay? And it actually wasn't a bad experience. He just had issues, and we're going to talk about that, okay? So the first question is, are police needed and why? And the answer to this question, some people are not going to like. But in my humble opinion, yes, you need the police. Are y'all out of your mind? Do y'all see what we're dealing with? Do you see what we're dealing with narcissists alone? Narcissists are baby criminals. I'm talking about narcs of all races. They're baby wannabe criminals. They just don't act on it because they have huge egos. But what about all the real criminals? All races, I have to keep clarifying, all races. I'm talking about anyone who commits a criminal act, real criminal acts. I've actually heard people say, we don't need police anymore. Are you serious? Really? You don't think so? People are still out here murdering each other, still putting their children and wives and spouses in body bags and dumping them. Like, it's happening, guys. Until we get rid of the wicked element in our society, we will always need cops. And even after we get rid of the wicked element, if we're still doing things like driving cars, there will always be car accidents. Who's going to come like sort all that out? Your family? You have to be more realistic. So are police needed? Yes, in my opinion. And why? Because we still have individuals of all races in our society who do not value other people's existence or property or anything. So it's odd to me when I hear people say we don't need the police. I'm like, so if something happens to you, if you get victimized in some way, you don't want that followed up on? You don't want that person arrested? If someone hurts your child on purpose, you don't want that person apprehended and put away? You don't? You just want them to roam free under the what? We should forgive everybody. Everyone makes mistakes. Is that what you want? So I guess I'm a little bit more, I guess you could say, militant than others. I believe in law and order. I do. I believe in rules. I do. I think they have a purpose. I think they actually serve a purpose. And that's just my personal opinion. Now, has policing gotten out of control? Yes. 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 Yes, it has. There's no denying that. Okay. Now, what gets me in trouble often is my perspective on the why it's gotten out of control. Oftentimes, people want to run to the first answer, which is the easiest answer, which is racism. Now I'm going back to specific white and black, okay? Anytime an incident occurs between a police officer and a black person or person of color, the first thing people run to is racism. And I'm telling you guys, that's a mistake. It's a mistake, but I'm getting way ahead of myself, okay? Let me slow down. The question we want to ask ourselves, if we believe we do need police, which I think we do, is how can it be done in a more fair, less lethal way? How can we achieve that? All right. It needs to be done. How can we do it in an equitable, less lethal way? Why do people have to die all the time? I get that there are circumstances where the police are being fired on, so they fire back. I get it. Got it. But why are people dying in very simple circumstances? You know, the stakes were not as high. Life wasn't at risk. Nothing was at risk other than like a financial crime, which you can put people in jail for. You know, why we can't keep killing people because of these other reasons that we're going to get into. Does racism potentially play a role in that because of some preconceived biases and notions? Yes, yes, yes. But because we can't prove that all the time, we have to focus on what we can actually prove. Do you understand? Let me slow down. Let me stick to the list. That's what it's here for. As a society, we have to recognize the pathway from asshole to murderer, okay? People think being an asshole is cute, all right? Being a dick, being rude, being mean, belligerent, whatever. You have to understand how that could ultimately lead to taking a life either on purpose or accidentally. You have to get that, right? So, which leads to the bullet right up underneath that, which is stop making assholes famous in general. And I mean that in general. We've got to stop celebrating people who don't think it's important to be respectful towards other human beings. Where's my mouse? Oh, it's over here. Okay. Because when we think it's cool to not care about others, disrespect them, be rude to them, and we honor that, that attitude carries over into all places, including the police academy, right? Where being the biggest asshole, you're kind of respected like the big boy on the block. Listen, I had some insight, you guys, in that little bit of time that I dated a police officer. Oh, I asked every question he would let me. I know he got tired of me because I wouldn't wear him out, but I would slide those questions in like in threes. I'd be like, so what's it like inside? Oh, yeah. Oh, really? Oh, so the bigger jerk you are, the more you're respected. Oh, wow. I'm like, is it racist in there? Oh, and then I'm like, pull back, PT, pull back, pull back. before he gets annoyed. But he'd answer the questions for the most part. And yeah, there's a lot of, oh, I'm getting so far ahead of myself. We have to stop making assholes famous, okay? Real quick, the dangers of low oversight. Actually, I should have put this after. We'll come back to this. This should go after. So actually, why don't we just, since I'm here, since we're building this bridge together, let's build the bridge at the same time. You build yours and I'll build mine. Let's see. Bam. Let's build the bridge at the same time. You build yours and I'll build mine. Okay. Boom. Now let's talk about these other causes. Okay. This is really what I want to dive into. All right. And I even went so far. Let me come over here. Give me 1 second. Let me just switch my screens around. I made a graphic. Okay. And let's see what this does. Oh, beautiful. I love it when my technology works for me. Thank you. Okay. Let's talk through this because like I said earlier in the stream, I get in trouble with my own community because I feel like I'm not following the proper narrative all the time. There's a certain narrative that's expected out of me. And I mean, just kind of like in regular life. And if I don't reiterate that with 100%, not accuracy, but alignment, I guess you could say, I kind of get in trouble a little bit, but I mean it because I'm like, if we don't start thinking about this other stuff, we will never move forward, ever. Okay. So I'm just going to put my neck out here and risk getting in trouble and ostracized to talk about this. Okay. Now, at the bottom of the slide, it says these are not to be interpreted as excuses. They're not excuses. Okay. They are potential reasons for what else might be going on. Right. Because when I see these incidents and events occur in our society, I am disheartened, of course, but I have to start thinking about things. And I'm like, this is crazy. This doesn't make sense. What else is going on? What else could possibly be going on? Now, the first answer that's always jumped to is racism, right? And that could almost be supported by data when you pull up the arrest statistics, stop and frisk statistics, things of that nature. It happens more to the Black community or in certain communities than other communities, right? Right. And I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is, number one, that's incredibly hard to prove, right? Because you can't get into somebody's mind. So what else could be going on? So let's take a look. What about generalized mental problems? Has anyone stopped to think about that? A lot of cops are kind of off. And I mean that. Off. So you think they're meditating on race all day, and they might be meditating on, I'm not going to say that. Y'all get mad at me. I was going to say they might be meditating on the Illuminati 5G all day. Listen, all I'm saying is they may not only have racist problems. What if they also have mental problems? What if they have mental problems only? What if they're schizophrenic? What if they're bipolar? And it just hasn't been detected yet. If we only look at racism, we may never figure out that he's a psychopath. Do you see what I'm saying? And I'm not speaking on all cops, but a lot of cops get into some really grimy stuff on the side. Grimy on the side. It has nothing to do with their job at all. Weird stuff. Okay? Listen, y'all. I'm trying to tell you. Here's the one I think we're dealing with more often than even racism. And I know y'all may not like to hear me say that, but I really feel more often than not, we're dealing with ego, machismo, and control issues. Okay. So in regard to George Floyd, the gentleman who died after having his neck kneed on for 8 minutes. When I watched that video, I said to myself, the reason he didn't get off of his neck is because he could not give the crowd that satisfaction. Do you understand? I don't personally believe when he sat there with his knee in his neck, he's like, yeah, I'm killing a black guy right now. Yes, yes, yes. Die, black guy, die, black guy, die. I don't believe that. I believe what was happening is I'm the law. I'm in control of the situation. I'm doing what I want to do because I'm the law. Yeah, I should probably get off his neck right now. But if I do, that means they just punked me out. They just punked me. And I'm no punk. I'm the law. So I need to stay here to show them that you don't run me. I'm telling y'all, oh my God, you've got to get into the deep, deep inner workings. I'm telling you, when you stop at racism, you're leaving all this other stuff out. You're leaving it out. Right. And listen, trust me, I 100%, I'm with you. I'm like, I understand how someone's preconceived notions could make them fear a black man more than they fear a white man. So yes, we need to work on those notions. So you have equal levels of fear. You should be equally afraid is the issue. You shouldn't be less afraid of one than the other. You actually should have equal fear and respond accordingly. Right. But I'm telling you guys, especially when it comes to man on man situations, a man who is in a position of authority is not going to relinquish his control and his power to another man. And when he starts to feel that power and control slipping away, if he's not in control of his emotions, he will do whatever it takes to regain control of that situation. And I'm telling you, that's more powerful than racism. I'm telling you it is, guys. I know you don't want to believe me, but picture being a police officer really quick. And you have a certain block or beat or whatever that you work. And you get a call, armed robbery in progress. You pull up, you see the robbery happening, right? You get out of your car, you start chasing the robbers. And you almost catch them, and then they slip away. And the whole neighborhood sees it. The whole neighborhood sees them get away from you, right? So now you're the cop that they got away from, right? Let's say the neighborhood forgets about it. Something else happens later on that day. A week later, similar situation. You get called to break up a fight. You go to break up the fight. You try to apprehend the aggressor. The aggressor gets away from you. The whole neighborhood sees you. They're laughing at you. They're mocking you, right? Over time, imagine what that does to the cop's perception in the eyes of the people that he's supposed to, quote unquote, serve. Like, you're a punk. Like, we punk you all the time. You know, you can never catch us. You're a punk. So what a lot of them do to prevent that from happening are things that outrage us. And I'm not saying that what they do is right. I'm not, get your knees up. You know what I mean? Get a lasso. I don't know. Get something to assist you with doing your job, because I don't personally believe there's no such thing as criminals. I know criminals exist, and I know that they need to be dealt with. They need to be managed, if you will. So you need to figure out how you're going to manage your criminals. But the way that a lot of them figure out how to do that are by taking it above and beyond. Right? Parents might be able to relate to this, where you might have your children acting out. I've heard parents say, when my children get crazy, I get crazier. Because the children have to, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. You do you in your household. Just try not to hurt anybody, okay? What I'm saying is, the point of what they're trying to say is, oh, you don't have control over this situation. I do. I am the authority in this situation. So if you get crazy with me, I'm going to get crazier with you. So you see that there's no level you can take it with that I won't top. It's the same thing going on in these situations, guys, which leads kind of into the second one, which is that need to save face. Y'all don't realize how important that is. You don't. Like, the cop who had his knee in George Floyd's neck, He was trying to save face. Like, you're not going to tell me to get up. You're not a police officer. You have no authority, right? Now, a compassionate human being would have at least rolled the man on his side. If you felt like you had to pin him, which didn't look like you did, put your knee in his shoulder. That's what shoulders are for. They're pretty durable, you know? Put him in the car. Put him in the squad car. Like, there was a million other options, right? But because he's surrounded by this crowd, they're all filming, all telling him, get up, move, get off, get off, get off. It's like, I'm not going to give you that satisfaction. And y'all have to understand how dangerous that is. This is what they need to be screening for in these police academies, that control freakery. Like, are you such a control freak that you would risk life in an unnecessary situation just to prove a point, right? Can we interview your ex-wives? Hello, ex-wife number one. Why did you divorce him? Oh, because he's a control freak and he'd do anything to get his way. Thank you so much for your time. Ex-wife number two. Why did you divorce him? Oh, he's a psychotic control freak who literally would do anything to get his way. Okay, good to know. Noted. This is the type of stuff we need to look for, right? So moving on, another issue that we could be having is just flat out fear. And I don't mean fear of one race. I mean fear in general. So you signed on to be a cop. You made it through the academy. Now you're finally on your beat alone. And what some cops might discover is that they're actually scared in general. Meaning, if they're walking down a highway to investigate like a car crash that maybe has fallen off a ravine and a deer hops out, the deer is going to get shot because they're scared. And I'm not saying that's good. Read the bottom. These are not excuses. What I'm saying is this is what we need to be searching for. Like, are you scared? If you're scared, say you're scared. Because then maybe we can take you off the beat and put you on the desk. We're not going to fire you just because you're afraid. But what happens is when you have people out here in general who are scared, they make decisions that scared people make. And again, these are not excuses. These are alternate reasons for what could be going on. My intent is to elevate the conversation, not circle it. What else could be happening here? That's what I'm asking, okay? Similar to fear, but not exactly, just in flat out errors in judgment. You know, mistakes. Are people out here making fatal, lethal mistakes that they actually didn't mean to, but maybe they thought the gun was not loaded, but listen, I mentioned to you all a couple months ago that I was looking into getting a firearm. I was dead serious. So I talked to a friend over FaceTime. He gave me this full tutorial, right? He has multiple guns. And so he was showing me like how you take the clip out, what it looks like when the safety's on, when it's off, what the different safeties look like, how one of them has like a color. So like when it's locked and loaded, it's like red on the side. Lots of stuff going on. And the fear that I have just thinking through everything that he showed me, I'm like, that's a lot to remember. I'm like, so I have to take that out, move that back, put that back in. Like I need plug and play. I need something that can charge like on a USB plug. Like I need a USB gun with very, very simple, very simple load, very simple unload, very easy to know whether or not it's loaded. Like what he was showing me, I was thinking to myself, how do people remember all of this in the heat of the moment? If you don't shoot your gun every day, how do you remember, oh, that's what it looks like when the safety is on. That's what it looks like when the safety is off. It's half cocked. Now it's all the way cocked, you know? All of those little details in the moment, how do you remember that? So that's what I mean by errors in judgment. When we stop at racism alone, we're leaving out all these other questions. Like, did you think you had a different gun that day? You see what I mean? And finally, I'll never throw out that someone just might be stupid, just dumb. You're just an idiot. I'd never throw that out. You don't know how to talk through things. You don't know how to sort through your issues with words. You have to use your hands and always fight and escalate. You might just be dumb. Stupid is an option. It's an option, right? But when we settle on racism as the only cause, we leave out the fact that that fool might be stupid. So, oh yes, I understand. So the comment says you can't overlook the data, PTE. It shows that Black men are disproportionately targeted. It's not that I don't agree or understand with that. It's not. But what I'm saying is, if we can't, how do you outline racism from a mental perspective? We can't. But if Black men are disproportionately targeted, you know, one thing I could say, Black men often don't take kindly to disrespect. So what's going to happen when you have white cop and Black man? Eventually, we're going to have a face-off of ego, machismo, and control. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's hard to say skin color only. Do you see what I'm saying? Oh, it's so hard to explain. I recognize it's disproportional. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is, what other explanations could there be other than simply racism? Because that's stopping too short. I should have put a lack of training on here too. I forgot. Lack of training. Right? We can't stop so short in our conversation and explanation of things, because then we leave everything else out. Because what if you cure the racism, but there's still machismo issues there, ego issues? Okay. So let's get through this list and then we'll wrap up. We'll wrap up. 1 second here. All right. Okay, let's look at the rest of our list and we'll finish up here. I appreciate you all so much. I really do. All right, so we just looked at this. Again, these are not excuses. I don't want these interpreted as excuses. What I'm saying is, let's expand the conversation, because what if something else is going on that we're not noticing? Do you see what I mean? What if police departments in Black communities get less funding? So with less funding, there's less resources. The cops are angrier. They're more bitter. They're overworked. They're more prone to reach into any racism. If they have some, they're more prone to reach into it because they're already aggravated people. You see what I mean? Like, we have to look at the totality of a situation, because if we just fix one piece, but we don't fix the others, the issue is going to keep happening. Okay. So now we can talk about this dangers of low oversight, which is one thing I really do think is a big problem. When there's really no oversight, safe havens form. So places where people can go be racist if they're racist, be sloppy, you know what I mean? Be unethical. So when there's no oversight over these things, this has a high potential to form. And here's where I feel like there is heavy need for reformation. How we pull it off, I'm not sure. But something needs to be done to make sure we don't just have these little pockets where nobody's watching, nobody's looking over the shoulders at all, and they pretty much can do whatever they want. So there are dangers to low oversight. We have to stay vigilant of the safe havens, all right? And part of that low oversight is that policies and procedures aren't followed correctly. So one big thing I think we could do to try to fix this police brutality issue is we have to have some form of standardized procedures nationwide. And I know people don't like to hear things like that because it makes them think socialism, communism, right? But what I'm saying is, There needs to be a set of standard procedures that are followed, that are known to everyone, the police and to the citizens, right? That enable consistent behavior across the board. Do you see what I'm saying? The goal is consistency. Somehow we've got to get a standardized process. Because when the police forces are attached to their communities, as they should be, what ends up happening is, oh, that's Johnny's boy. He's a good kid. You see what I mean? Which is fine. But did that good kid just do something bad? Okay, well, then he needs to be held to the exact same standards that are standardized across the country. That could get complicated, and there's probably lots of reasons for why it's state specific, might even be a legal issue, but I'm just trying to throw out other options here. Because I think part of the problem is it's different everywhere, different rules everywhere you go. So no one has a standard set of procedures that they follow based on just common sense and dignity and what's right, Okay, skipping over that. Additionally, things going on that could be going on in the department that could be contributing to these issues that we're seeing. I've always believed that it was layered. Cops who aren't really listening to what a person is saying to them. These are all the narcissistic behaviors, right? Not really listening, not fully investigating a claim or not really taking it further. Placing in the precinct, placing budget over resources like training, working people to the point where they're burnt out. These issues all contribute, in my personal opinion, to the issues that we're seeing. They don't get paid that much. They only get paid like 30, 40,000, maybe. Some of them make more the longer they're on the job. They don't get paid that much. You don't think that affects their mentality? Like, I'm out here every day, could be killed any day for 30 grand? Like, this is what I mean by additional issues. And again, these are not excuses. But if we want to fix the problem, we have to look at the whole problem. Okay. We already kind of talked about that. So let's talk about these questions and then we're going to wrap up really quick. Regarding police brutality, the big questions we need to answer are, how should crime be handled in this country is the first one. What I hear missing from the argument often is what would be appropriate. So often what you hear is stop shooting us, stop killing us, which yes, obviously, of course. But you cannot lie and say that there aren't circumstances where a person who might happen to be Black needs to be taken into custody. It happens. I hate that it happens. I hate more than anyone else that it happens. I hate that, but it happens. Every now and then, people need to be taken into custody. How are we going to handle that? What would we deem appropriate? If that individual is behaving in a violent way, what is acceptable to restrain that individual and bring them into custody? We have to answer these questions, okay? This is how we get heard, all right? Because if we just continuously scream racism, 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 it's not that it's not true, it's that it starts to get tuned out. So now is the plan portion of this presentation. How should crime be handled in this country? That is the question. The next question, when is force acceptable? When is it acceptable? Okay. Next question, what exactly is being asked for and how will we know when it has been received? So in other words, how will we know this particular fight has been won is the question, okay? And then the sub-bullet to that is, I was attempting to answer my own question. Is the answer to that question when we still have crimes being committed, just no murder of the criminals? So is that the goal as a country? Oh, we don't care about crime so much. Just don't kill the criminals. Is that what we're going for? Do you see what I mean? What are we asking for? And how will we know when it has been received? Are some of the major questions for me here. Okay. Or is it just a simple, no matter what the crime, as long as everyone is being treated the same, as long as the criminal is being treated in the same way? Because the way I've also interpreted this answer is, and this is intended to help you explore the subject more deeply. Okay. Would you be okay if white criminals were getting killed at the same rate? And if the answer to that question is yes, I mean, okay. But when you hear it, like something is wrong with the overall question. Do you see? It's like, if they were killing white criminals at the same rate, would we still be upset? And if so, if not, where has that put us as a human society in general? Oh, we don't care if they're murdering them as long as they murder them equally. Yeah, so yesterday 10 white guys got shot, 10 black guys got shot. That's life. Oh, and 10 Hispanic. Yep, balanced. So are we looking for equal murder across the board? Is that our end goal? And I hope when I ask it to you that way, it starts to make more sense. So what exactly are we asking for, and how will we know when it's been received? You see? It's complicated. All right. So they're important questions because otherwise we just are shouting into the darkness with no direction. You see what I mean? What I would want, I'll go ahead and answer the what exactly is being asked for. Here's what I would like. First of all, I feel like all police precincts, substations, all that need to be, what's the word they do to taxes? Audited. Their training programs need to be audited. Their incident reports need to be audited, major audits, right? And based on that data, we need to figure out how we, an intelligent 21st century society, can de-escalate conflicts with human beings without them ending up dead and they weren't presenting a violent threat. We've got to figure that out, right? Because I personally don't think the answer is equal across the board. Like, well, it's not so much that they're killing them, it's that they're killing them disproportionately. I don't think we would feel better if it ended up being an equal number of white criminals or potential criminals being killed, equal number of black potential criminals being killed. And I had to put the potential in there because oftentimes there's been no trial. So I don't think we as a society like the judge, jury, executioner format. We don't like that. So how will we know when we have actually fixed this? How will we hold policing more accountable? An idea I thought of that might actually already exist is to make police's discipline records public in terms of their interactions with people, right? That might already be the case. But I bet that would change some things if their incident reports with the general public were made public. So you can look up any officer and pull up their records with people. You see what I mean? I bet that'll change a lot of things. If you're going to be the law, you have to be the law. You have to live kind of a squeaky life a little bit, you know? So let's see your incident reports. I bet you that would change things a little bit. Okay, let's close this out. We have to make sure that we celebrate the wins also. So when people are arrested, when they are convicted, when they do go to jail, make sure you celebrate that and don't fall into the trap of, he'll probably just get out in 6 months. He'll probably just get out in 8 months. Man, he's not going to get convicted at all. You have to celebrate the wins. You have to, or else you will send yourself into depression and hopelessness. Okay? Depression and hopelessness. You have to celebrate the wins when they happen. Okay? Y'all know how I feel. I personally don't think racism is solvable. Police brutality, I do believe, is actually very solvable. I think there's a lot of things that can be done to prevent it and to hold those accountable after it takes place. I think what has taken place now is that we've just had a lot of different departments that have gone on for decades with really no oversight and no standardization. They're not modern. If you walk into some of these police precincts, like the year is like 1980. Paper everywhere. You see what I mean? Like it hasn't become a modern practice, if you will. So it needs some updating. And this is one of them. Let's do closing thoughts. Obviously, I'm not talking about all white people as I talk about the black and white divide. I'm not. It's not about all white people. It's about who has the power to affect another group, right? And who has had the power to affect another group. And what has that effect been, right? We've talked about how you can advocate, in your own private world. Try hard not to turn a blind eye. If you happen to have racist friends and family members, instead of attacking when they start up with their racism, try a different approach and start asking them questions. Because if there is a person who can come off the fence in terms of their racism, that's how you're going to get them to come off. Asking them questions, open-ended questions, getting them to dig into why they even feel the way that they do. Like, where did that come from? Why do you feel like that? This is how you advocate, right? For everyone else and for my Black audience, as you fight this good fight, tackle one area at a time. You cannot get overwhelmed. Just pick a cause. There's many. And devote yourself to that as opposed to trying to devote yourself to all of them. You'll get overwhelmed and depressed. And part of the reason is because you have to understand you're dealing with a narcissistic mind. The racist mind is a narcissistic one. And anyone who's battled a narcissist ever in life anywhere knows that it's a losing fight, kind of, sort of. All you can fight for is legislation. You cannot change the heart and you cannot change the mind, and you should not try. So don't get overwhelmed. I want to hit on the media really quick, because I do feel like the media is contributing quite heavily to the divide and to the fires and to the tension, right? I don't think they're helping. And this goes for all media outlets. I do think they're fanning the flames, and mainly because they're not having the conversations that move us forward and heal this. It's almost like, look at what happened. How racist. It's like, yeah, we know. Now let's start talking about holding that, whoever did that, accountable, and how we can fix it and cure it. They don't want to talk fix and cure, because fix and cure does not bring ratings. So the media has a huge role in this. And I just have to say this really quick, and then we'll move to that last question. Have you noticed that when it comes to these topics, this is the rollout. This is how they roll it out. A race-based incident occurs. They put it on the news, right? Everybody goes up in arms, right? Then a new piece of evidence comes out a day or two later that completely would shine like a different light on the story had it been presented the first time you brought it up. Then everyone goes, wow, the crowd goes nuts, right? Then a day or two later, something has been dug up on somebody, either the perpetrator or the victim, intended to shift your perspective on that person. And then that's put out. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is, why don't you put it all out at once? Because to me, the more I monitor these things, the more it seems like you're purposely doing that. You're purposely giving 1/10 of the story, watching everyone's reaction, looking at everyone get bent out of shape. Then you give 2/10 of the story. And it's like, oh, oh, well, but wait a minute. Then you give 3/10 of the story. It's like they feed it in bite-sized chunks to keep the populace riled up. And I'm starting to notice, pay attention, because it's going to happen again, guys. I hate to tell you that, but it is going to happen again. And the way it happens is this: a race-based incident takes place with one camera angle. That'll be the top story for a day. 2 days later, the second camera angle comes out. That changes everyone's mind. Now everyone's yelling in a different direction. Then 3 or 4 days later, something comes out that speaks to the character of either the perpetrator or the victim. Now everyone's divided and torn. Oh, like I feel weird about that. I feel really, really weird about that. So I don't know, because I don't like the alternative of not hearing about these incidents because they need to be reported on. But I don't like how they are rolled out to the people. I don't like how it's fed in little bite-sized pieces to get certain reactions at certain times. I don't like that. Give the whole story, or just wait until you have the whole story and then tell everybody. You see what I mean? So I feel like it's not intended to heal or inform or anything. It's just intended to upset people. But my last and final question, and I'm pretty sure that I already know the answer to this, but this question I put here for anyone who actually didn't know and may actually like feel different inside now. Does my being Black now affect how you view the channel? Because if it does, then that's a perfect practice for your bias awareness. Because you would have to ask yourself the question, why? Why do I feel differently towards her now that I know that? What changed? Like when I thought she was a white woman, did that change my view of her credibility? You see, little things like that, right? But like I said, I have no doubts that my viewers, everyone in the chat, I have no doubt I'll see you again. But hopefully you feel closer to me now that you know that. And we can start to really talk and have real discussions and conversations here and all that fun stuff. But you guys, let me summarize with just my main ideas. My main ideas are: racism is a problem in this country. It is still a problem. Sometimes I feel like not so much. Other times I feel like it's a bigger problem than even I could wrap my mind around. There's still a lot of things that need to be fixed. My faith in whether or not they will be fixed is questionable because we've already had so much time to fix them. And the arguments have been made, the cases have been made, and it's still not fixed, you see. My faith is questionable in whether or not it could ever actually happen. So I'm relying on you guys' hope at this point. If there is hope for fixing it, I outlined a few ways that we could do that. And I outlined a few ways that Caucasian and white people can be advocates in their own way. Okay, so that's kind of where I stand on it. In regard to police brutality, yes, I believe that's a problem as well. I believe that in addition to racist biases that some departments or some individuals may hold, there are a variety of other issues also going on at the same time that we have a tendency to overlook because we blame racism alone as the issue. And my question once again is, if you fixed it, first of all, how would you know you fixed it? But second of all, what about everything else that might actually be contributing to the problem? Right? So if you get out all the racist cops, what about all the cops that are just scared? What about them? So we have to explore every alternative to make sure that we actually solve the problem so we don't keep revisiting it over and over and over and over again. And with that, you guys, I am going to wrap. Normally I do an after show, but I've been talking for about 2 hours straight, so I'm actually very tired. My throat's worn out. However, as I'm reading through your comments, watching the playback, I'll be paying a lot of attention. And if I see that there's another conversation that needs to be had. I will do another live stream to kind of address whatever came out in the chat. I just can't do it right now. I'm tired and my nose and throat are all dried out. So I thank you all so much. Thank you for letting me be free and speaking freely. I hope I didn't offend. I hope I didn't hurt anyone's feelings. All I ever seek to do is encourage discussion and growth and progress, because y'all, we have so many things that need to be repaired in this country. So I'm all about fixing what can be fixed. Maybe this can, maybe it can't, but this was my 2 cents on it, okay? So I appreciate you all. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll talk to you again soon, okay? Bye.